So, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a bit of a different video. I wanted to address something that a very prominent, very popular, very iconic, very legendary, very beloved game developer, Eiji Aonuma, had to say about The Legend of Zelda and people who want a more linear Legend of Zelda experience after playing Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. Here's what he had to say. Well, I do think we have a tendency to want things that we don't currently have. And there's a bit of a grass is greener mentality. But I also think that what the freedom players have in the more recent games in the series, there still is a set path. It just happens to be the path they chose. So I think that that is one thing I kind of like to remind myself about the current games that we're making. But also, it's interesting when I hear people say these things because I'm wondering, why do you want to go back to a type of game where you're more limited or more restricted in the type of things or ways that you can play? But I do understand the desire that we have nostalgia, and so I understand it from that aspect. I think he doesn't understand based on that. There is a bit of nostalgia there, but that's not it. The reason why people want the more linear Zelda is because there was something special about the temples, the music. The divine beasts in Breath of the Wild were shit. They were not good. The music wasn't good. Like, there was a bit of innovation there with the fact that they could move and stuff, but they were not good dungeons because they weren't dungeons. What people want is both. People want the open world. They want to be able to explore. They want the freedom, but they also want temples. Now, in Tears of the Kingdom, you did a better job of this. The Fire Temple in Tears of the Kingdom, I think, came very close, but it wasn't quite there. In Skyward Sword, you had some of the best temples in the Legend of Zelda series. The Water Temple was iconic, and the bosses were unique and interesting, and they were relevant to where you were. In Tears of the Kingdom, you had a little bit more of that, but people want both. It's not nostalgia. They want to be able to play the game at their pace and their leisure and pick one area to do and be able to do that first and gather what they want and fly around and do all that. But they want the authentic Legend of Zelda experience that you've built up for years. They want to go into a dungeon and have it feel like it's a dungeon. They want to have it feel like it's special and it's big and it's an undertaking. And then when you've done it, you have that feeling of completion, unlike other things in the game, which are more at your time and pace. To be able to combine them, I think, is going to be the recipe for the next generation of Zelda. It's not nostalgia, it's something more. It's wanting both of it. So I would love an open world Legend of Zelda game where the temples were in depth and the mechanics for Breath of the Wild, like Ultra Hand, should never have been allowed in any temple. Now you say, well, it's the mechanic of the game. True, but it made a lot of that stuff way too easy. It made a lot of that stuff way too easy. People want the classic Zelda puzzles. They also want the challenges that come from the shrines. They want both. And you can give them both. That's something that you can do. Now, If it were me, I would go far beyond what Nintendo has done here. They gave us very basic creative skills with the house. In the next Zelda, I would allow the player to build up their own town. Allow them to build up their own community if they want, to do farming, fishing, to be able to pet the damn dog, to have caves and things to explore, items to collect. I would have it be the best of both worlds. But then, once you got down to business, once you really had to go and do the story, then you had to go in and do the dungeons. And in the dungeons, they were difficult. They were puzzles. You really had to think about what to do. Whatever mechanics and items that you got from outside, maybe a basic number of them could be brought in, but the majority of them couldn't be used in the temple because it adds a layer of challenge. Also, what I would do is I would completely remove the food system in the next game. Because it was ridiculous that there was no limitation on the amount of food that you could eat. You could get hit and eat a food that refilled all your health and gave you like 20 extra 20 extra hearts. You just kept eating and eating and eating. There should have been a limitation every battle. That way there was a bit of a challenge because people eventually, once they got 3 durian fruits, and they could just make that dish over and over and over, they were pretty much unstoppable. But there are things that I like. In Breath of the Wild, I love the Guardians. I love the feeling of just absolute terror when you hear that music. So I don't think it's nostalgia. I think that people want a best of both worlds situation. And if you're thinking, Eiji Aonuma, that the only reason that people want that old style of game is based on nostalgia, you don't understand why audiences like the old games. The temples looked beautiful. The aesthetics were amazing. The themes, the items that you would get, every dungeon felt like something special. Now, what you may have to do is find a way to allow the player to go to any dungeon they want first and play the game that way, but also giving them the linear dungeon experience. There is no comparison between Ocarina of Time's dungeons and Tears of the Kingdom's dungeons. Ocarina of Time's dungeons were so much better. They were so much better. And for you to go that length of time, I mean, we're talking a long time here. We're talking, 1997? We're talking like 26 years. And 26 years later, you make Breath of the Wild and you make Tears of the Kingdom. And the dungeons you can't even make as good as you could then? That's a problem. The dungeons weren't as good. It's all about themes, aesthetics, new enemy types, something new that they experience every time they go in, a new mechanic, something to do, something that is unique to that temple that they may never see again. The Water Temple. It was notorious. In the next Zelda, you need to make the hardest water temple you've ever made. And you need to make it something that's absolutely soul-crushing. But fun. Because I love the Water Temple in Ocarina of Time. It's my favorite dungeon. Because it's a challenge and it's interesting. You need to adopt what you made in the past and make it for the future. Gaming today has changed. It's not just about open worlds and open sandboxes or open air experiences. You have to give them something traditional at the same time. And what people want is The Legend of Zelda. They also want story. Now, I know that Nintendo and you, Mr. Aonuma, you're allergic to the word story. Because the story for Tears of the Kingdom was terrible. It wasn't good. It was very minimal. There were parts of it that were brilliant. But it didn't connect in any way to Ocarina of Time, which would have been one of the biggest wins if the sages, well, first of all, said things that were different. They all didn't have the same answer. But if they were the sages from Ocarina of Time, that would have been huge. That would have been massive. People would have loved that. Because it is nostalgia. But it's also making something new for a new generation. So, I saw him say this, but I vehemently disagree. Aonuma has indicated that the gameplay in Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom is where the series will continue to go in the future. Good. However, it should be in a different world as Hyrule from the two games. Okay, good. You're going to make a new Hyrule. You're going to keep a lot of the same things. Good. But if you do, you have to make this change. Combine the past with the present to think of the future. Anyway, that'll do it for today's video. Thanks for watching, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you next time.